Iony Island. On maps, it looks pretty unassuming, but when you look into it, there's a lot more than meets the eye. Today, I'm going to use the internet to find primary and secondary sources to find out when this place was discovered, if there's any buildings on it, if any shipwrecks that happened here, and what goes on here today. Oh yeah, I'm starting off on Apple Maps because Google Maps looks like this. But we can start out by zooming out a bit and seeing where the heck we even are. It's found in the eastern part of Russia in the Okhotsk Sea, and it's pretty isolated from anything else. There's not a lot of major settlements around it, and really no islands for hundreds of kilometers anywhere around it. So let's dive into learning about this place. The Wikipedia article for Iony Island is pretty underwhelming. I mean, it doesn't even say when it was exactly discovered, so we're not going to just look at Wikipedia. We're going to use more primary and secondary sources to figure out what's going on here. Some things that might help me search this place is formerly known as Jonas Island. There was a ship in 1855 that wrecked here, and people hunted whales and seals here for a while, and that's pretty much it. One of the first things I found was from the Library of Congress. In 1849, Thomas Stevens described this area as an untouched whaling ground, and shortly after that, a bunch of people came to that sea to go hunt whales. Unfortunately, whale hunting was far too common in the 1800s, but here's an old logbook from 1849, and on the entry from Friday, July 27th, 1849, the author writes, and it's kind of hard to tell what they're saying, but looks like fine, pleasant weather, wind from the southwest by south. And in the third line, the author does mention that at daylight, they saw Jonas Island. It's really hard to read the rest of it, but the latitude they put is 5625 by 143, which is almost the exact same coordinates that we see when we go in Google Maps. There's another logbook from Wednesday, August 8th, 1849. I believe it reads, begins with fresh breezes from east-southeast, steering west by south. Saw plenty of seals and birds. And on the second to last line, it does look like they mentioned Jonas Island, although it's kind of hard to tell. Saw thousands of humpbacks. And then they also put that same latitude and longitude that's right around Iony Island. They don't mention if they actually land on the island, but it looks like they came pretty close. Okay, those didn't give us a lot of information about Iony Island, but on Wikipedia it does read on June 3rd, 1855, the ship Edgar of Cold Spring wrecked on the island. Let's look into that one. So I found this newspaper article from October 20th, 1855, only a couple months after that shipwreck happened, and from Boonville, Missouri. The Boonville Weekly Observer actually mentioned this shipwreck. They say the loss of 14 whale ships this season were reported, but no other names were given except those above, and the Edgar of Cold Spring lost at Jonas Island. If you remember earlier, Jonas Island was the former name of Iony Island. Another ship was seen at Jonas Island, bottom upward. Could not make out her name. Weird. Well, we'll have to come back to that because I might have found a source that may explain what this is, but I'm not sure. So let's get to that later. Another article from October 14th, 1855, and the New York Daily Herald also describes the shipwreck. They mention it down here. The ship Edgar, Captain Piernon of Cold Springs, was totally lost on Jonas Island. Officers and crew all saved, and no report of her oil has been given. He saw his ship bottom up on Jonas Island, but could not make out her name. It was off Jonas, reported that 14 whale ships had been lost. It's hard to read out this because it's cut off. Those are really some of the only mentions in old newspapers I could find. In some of my previous videos, I found newspaper articles that described in length the shipwreck and the survival story of a lot of these, but this one is just a very short paragraph in some random newspapers. I then searched Iony Island in old newspapers, but that didn't come up with anything. Then I used the search term Jonas Island, and that came up with a few things. A couple mentions in The Polynesian from December 10th, 1859. They just describe a short story of these people who were whalers, and they saw a bowhead May 31st off Jonas Island. And in November of 1858, they also say they saw some whales around Jonas Island. So not enough information in this to find out what we're looking for, but let's try some different ways to find sources. It's easy to get in the trap of just looking at English websites, but if you come to the Wikipedia of the country that the island is from, sometimes you can get more information and more sources that you can look into. Now, this is translated, so it might be a little off, but on the Russian Wikipedia for Iony Island, it says that there's an automatic meteorological station on the island and an empty house built by an unknown person in the 1970s. As of 2018, the house is in a very deplorable state. People arrive on the island once a year to change the batteries. They also do mention when it was discovered, September 22nd, 1789, but they don't give any more information about that, so we're going to have to do our own research for that. I then started looking at the site called Old Maps, which is actually really cool to see different time periods for different areas to see maybe when an island was discovered. And I looked all through the 1700s, didn't see any mentions of Iony Island on any of these maps. Here's one from 1754, and as you can see right in the area where Iony Island is, there's nothing mentioned. But in later maps, like this one from 1883, you can actually see the island there. But it's listed as St. John Island instead of St. Jonas Island, but close enough. I then was led to this website that finally showed what that building on the side of the island was. And they mentioned on plot 9, there's a house built in the 70s by someone from hydrographers or radio amateurs. To this day, it is in satisfactory condition. Here's what the house looks like. It's real small, just one room on the side of the cliffs. You can see a bunch of birds around it too. So we got to figure out what this house was and when it was actually built. I then was led to this Russian website, which is also translated, so some things could be incorrect. This website has a lot more information than Wikipedia does. It mentions this place was known for more than 230 years, which would put us right around that 1780s mark. Here we go. It says in 1789, which is the same date that the Russian Wikipedia article has, it says the expedition of Billings and Sarychev was entrusted with the task of continuing the research work of the Russian navigator Vitus Bering. And they took the ship Glory of Russia, and they traveled from here to here. Then they accidentally discovered the island. They did not have the goal of discovering the island, it just happened. So here's the man that's credited with discovering the island. And interestingly, he also described the islands of Privilov, St. Matthew, St. Lawrence, King Island, which are islands in Alaska. And I actually did a video about a story near this Privilov and St. Matthew Island area where a shipwreck occurred that you can check out. But on this article, they don't mention Iony Island at all. And I looked into the other guy, the Billings guy, and they also don't make any specific mention about Iony Island, but he also played a crucial role in mapping a lot of these Alaskan and Eastern Siberian islands. Here's a map from 1806 on that same Wikipedia page, and if you zoom in all the way here, you can see right in the area of Iony Island. Looks like they do label it as Jonas Island, but it does look like it's in the right spot. You can also see the discrepancy of Eastern Siberia and modern day Alaska where they have mapped out. They have a lot of the coastline and the islands mapped out and a lot of the interior of Eastern Siberia, but the interior of Alaska is pretty much completely unknown to the people who made these maps. So let's continue reading this article. He named the island in honor of the Day of St. Jonah, and in 1788, an industrial ship was around the area, and the crew and ship disappeared without a trace. Probably at night, moving in complete darkness, the ship ran into the reefs that surrounded the island on all sides. Is it possible that this is that ship that was described in the 1855 newspaper when the Edgar was wrecked there? They did say another ship was seen at Jonas Island, bottom upward, and could not make out her name. I sadly couldn't find any more information about this one, but it is possible that that's what it is. I wish they gave a little more detail about how old or new the boat looked like it was, because this would have been around 65 to 70 years before. So I imagine the ship could be quite worn out by then and completely washed away. But let me know what you guys think. This article also talks about that Iony Island could have been seen back in 1726, as someone back then also made a map of this area, and they did put an island there, just describing it as the island has no inhabitants, full of birds. I then was led to RooTube, and there's a 10-minute video from 1947 all about traveling to Iony Island, and it's pretty interesting. I'll show you a few clips here.
Острова занял свыше 1,5 месяцев. Отделяют остров Ионы от...
So they're traveling to the island here, and then they had to take a little boat from their big boat because the shores are really rocky. It's really hard to land on this island, kind of like Ball's Pyramid, honestly.
Циклоны, рождаясь в океане, обрушивают первые удары на эту скалу.
So then they finally land on the island and hop up on the rocks and start bringing all their equipment up.
Найти пригодную для высадки бухту. Кроме аппаратуры, необходимо было доставить на сушу.
They started building a camp, and then they slept in tents right near the shore there. Then the next day, it looks like they started climbing up the mountains, bringing up all these materials, and then they built a pretty solid house up here. And this house looks like it's in the exact same location as the current house that's there today, but it's not the same house. So look at this house closely. Look in the background of the house. There's this distinctive little marking right on the side of a cliff here, and then to the left there's this grassy strip that kind of comes up in a star formation. And when we look at this, it also looks like that's that same area, just from a more zoomed in angle. You can kind of see that grass part at the top kind of forming a star here with the cliff to the right, but it's obviously not the same house because this one looks like it's built out of wood and doesn't have that door on this side of it. Then they finally start building this automatic weather station at the very peak of the mountain. And keep in mind this stuff in the bottom here for a future video that we'll look at, it might still be there today. This video is really cool. They start describing all the parts of the automatic weather station. It looks like the crew comes back here in the winter. I don't know if it was around the same time or if they came back in a different expedition, but they set everything back up and then they wrote something on the wall here, which you can see right there, and then they headed out. Then I found a more recent documentary about this island. This one's from 2023, so it shows a lot more stuff, but I'm just going to skip to the highlights of it. So he points to the house in this shot, which is in that same area from the photo earlier. If we go on Apple Maps, I believe is this right here. It looks like there's that star formation right up here and with the cliff to the right, and all the other angles kind of line up. There's not really any other good spot on this island to build a house, so I think this is where that house is on Apple Maps. But they get to the house and it is in deplorable condition. In 2023, it's pretty much completely destroyed. Look at it from the top here. I mean, the roof is completely caved in. The inside is all rotted out too. And it just does not look like it's in good condition. But obviously it was built back in the 70s and hasn't really been maintained, so that makes sense. Also, later in this film, they show a lot of old batteries or old materials, looks like near where the automatic weather station was. And it does look like similar equipment to what we saw in the other video. It kind of looks like that same area at the top of the mountain. There have also been ham radio expeditions here. As they say, it's very inaccessible. Firstly, due to the location, but secondly, it's so hard to land on these shores, and there's basically no good place to just chill on the island. It looks like the two expeditions were in 1990 and in 2017. This is what the island looks like from a distance. It looks pretty much like a pyramid from right here, and it looks super cool. Here's some pictures from the expedition from 2017. This island has a lot of birds on it and a lot of seals as well. Looks like here's their little camp that they set up right next to that building that's breaking down right there. There's some of the seals and birds that are chilling up here. More pictures of the inside of the old building, just completely gone at this point. I think we answered most of the questions when it was discovered around 1789, but probably before that by people. If there's any buildings on it, yes, there's at least that one building that's on the corner there, plus a couple other structures near the top for the automatic weather station. If any shipwrecks had occurred here, yeah, one did occur here in the mid-1800s and one occurred here in 1788, but no one knows what happened to it. And what goes on here today? Well, mostly just nature goes on here. A lot of seals, a lot of birds, a lot of whales around here. There's an automatic weather station, a couple ham radio expeditions, and people coming visiting this island every once in a while for science, but that's really it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video of me going through some random sources to kind of fill in some of the gaps that Wikipedia had and discover more about this place. Thanks for watching.